I'm Mike Gunton, I'm the creative director of the Natural History Unit, and I'm also the executive producer of the next big blockbuster that's going to be on BBC One Natural History show, which is called Dynasties. So I'm here today at the Everyman Theatre on behalf of the Natural History Network to talk about a little bit about how we came up with the idea, why we're doing this particular type of show, because it is different from the last couple we've done, the Planet Earth 2 and the Blue Planet 2, has a different form, and a little bit about some inside info about the challenges, and I'm going to give a little sneak preview of what's in it.
The family is one of the most powerful forces in nature. For the past 4 years, we've been filming some of the most celebrated yet endangered species of animal on Earth, revealing the most intimate and intense stories of their kind ever told. We join each family at a crucial moment in their lives, when the future of their dynasty hangs in the balance. We didn't know how these stories would unfold. Would they end in triumph or tragedy?
Dynasties is about the power of the family. I've been doing this job for a long, long time, and the sorts of big landmark shows we've been doing for a long time have a particular form to them, which is very successful, which is effectively a global perspective, quite thematic, and you have maybe 8, 9, 10 vignette sequences within a show which illustrate whatever that theme is. And they're very successful because every 4 or 5 minutes you get a new story, get a new location, and they've got a lovely rhythm to them. However, I felt that we had done a lot of those and it was beginning to get a bit predictable. Having said that, I thought that before we did Planet Earth 2 and Blue Planet 2, which of course have completely confounded that because they've done brilliantly. But nevertheless, I thought that even so, there was another sort of story to tell. And often when we do these shows, we spend some time with a creature or a location, and you think to yourself, this is so frustrating. There's such an amazing story to tell here, but we're only telling one little tiny moment of it, which is almost like their little party trick, whereas actually their lives, and particularly these social groups, the complexity and the intensity and I think the fascination of their lives just never gets told. So I thought, could we construct a very impactful, popular series which actually addresses that? And that's what Dynasty is. What we've done is we've taken 5 animal families, so 5 social groups, and each episode concerns itself with one animal, one group, and particularly about one individual amongst that group. So that's what we decided to do, find 5 animal families, 5 different species, where they had this kind of dynamic, but also where something dramatic was going to happen. There was going to be some power play. So it took, rather like a drama, actually, we spent about 6 months casting this. And I mentioned drama because actually these stories are very, very dramatic. Of course it's documentary, but there's a sort of convergence between documentary and drama in some of this natural history, and the audience seemed to like dramatic storytelling. So it seemed to be perfectly suited to that. So we cast 5 creatures. We found a chimpanzee troop, a lion pride, a wild dog, or we've called them painted wolves because that's their new name, pack, a tiger family, and as a sort of an outlier, but a twist on the turn on its tail, an emperor penguin colony. In terms of a filmmaker, it's an incredibly risky thing to do because all your eggs are in one basket. So you pick your family. So we pick this extraordinary troop of chimpanzees in Senegal, and then we take a deep breath and say, we're now going to commit all our resources for 2 years just to film that family. If they all died or if we weren't allowed to get in there, we have no film. So it was quite buttock clenching at times that this is all going to work. And also it was quite tricky for our commissioners to say, okay, we're going to give you a big lump of money to go and do this. But I think we all felt that if we did the research right and if we managed it well, we could come up with something spectacular. And as it turned out, I think the risk has paid off because what these shows do is not only I think they are emotional roller coasters, but they are very insightful about the natural history, the biology of the animals in a way that you don't normally get because you don't normally get the context. The big difference is that you get a particular perspective on these animals that you never normally get because we're spending so much time with them. And the way we've shot it, these aren't dramas, these are documentaries, but there is a dramatic form to them in the sense that you feel that you're in their world. And if it works, you are connected with them in a way that drama delivers. When the drama delivers well, that's what you get. And part of that is reinforced by the way we've shot it. We've tried to get the camera as close as we can. These are, by being with these animals a long time, they get habituated, they get used to us, so you can get closer. We've also used a lot of moving camera, so we try not to be static, because dramas very rarely have cameras on tripods, they're usually tracking. So the music and the way it's edited, all these things just add to a sense of being in a dramatic context. But underpinning that is that, and the critical thing is that you have to feel that every second is true. So they're quite an interesting marriage of a form or a feeling of drama, but an underpinning of utter reality. And that's one of the biggest challenges, because we are the BBC, everything has to be absolutely true. And also I think, irrespective of that, I think for these to work, you have to believe everything you see. So you can't feel that the hand of the filmmaker has turned a story into something that's not true. And that means you have to spend a lot of time with the animals, because they don't read the scripts. There are no scripts in that sense. And so you have to be able to cover it so that you try not to miss a moment. Or if you do miss a moment, you have to find a way of being able to tell that without sometimes not being able to see it. I get a bit tired of people talking about anthropomorphism because I think they misunderstand it, really. I don't think there's any problem with what some people call anthropomorphism, because we are all animals. And I think if you watch these films, you absolutely can see the challenges and relate to the challenges that these animals face, because Mother Nature throws the same challenges at all living things, and we all have to come up with the same with our own solutions to how you get on with your neighbours, how you look after your youngsters, how you maintain your status. All these things are common problems that all living things face, particularly in these sort of social groups. So I think people will relate to them. I mean, it's an interesting thing to see, because you don't want, I think some people might find it quite challenging to relate to it, because some of this is quite raw. And I think particularly when you see the chimpanzee film, they are so like us, but this particular group are very bipedal. They stand on their back legs a lot, and they look Planet of the Apes at times. And the behavior and the relationships, you can see sort of a parallel of stuff you see on the news when things go, there's quite a lot of conflict in the show. But I should say that every single one of them is ultimately uplifting, because what I think really comes out of it is that the flame for survival and to win against all costs, to overcome adversity, burns so brightly in these animals. There's so many things challenging them, but in the end they will prevail. And I think that's very, very uplifting. And there's comedic, there's funny moments in it as well, of course. So I think it is quite life-affirming to watch them. I don't think this is quite what the audience will expect. They've had Planet Earth 2, and they've had Blue Planet 2, which have created a certain kind of expectation in their heads about what a big blue-chip natural history show with David Attenborough is, and this is very different. And I've no idea whether that's going to be a positive reaction or not. But part of the job of the BBC is to innovate, and we're not a commercial organisation. We're not supposed to keep just doing the same thing time and time again. I think it's important that we push boundaries and experiment. And I think that there is a kind of zeitgeist at the moment where people are interested in the slightly grittier realities of life. The Bodyguard is just bang straight in with 10 million viewers. Why is that? Very, very intense. Dr. Foster, this is Dr. Foster. This is not the Durrells. So I think the audience will be surprised. I don't know whether they'll say this is just what I want or whether they'll find it too much or what. But part of our job is to push them and test them. When we cast this, I felt that obviously you want box office animals. You want animals that people like to watch. So they're dramatic. They're top favourite animals. You know, everybody loves a lion. Everybody loves a tiger. Everybody loves an emperor penguin. But also they are, in their own way, all quite fragile, vulnerable animals. So they're all endangered in some way, and that gives I think that adds an extra little bit of spice to the importance of telling these stories now. Because the shocking thing that some of this I didn't know. I had not realised how in trouble some of these creatures are, particularly lions. I had no idea that the lion population was in such trouble, and a lot of that comes from a common issue, which is about space. A lot of these animals just simply do not have enough space to live their lives the way they should. So I think there's an extra sort of piquancy to this, which is that every single day of their lives is a challenge and a struggle within nature, you know, from rivals, from within their own family, from the elements, but superimposed on that is this other underlying problem and struggle, which is this human encroachment, which is making their lives just tougher and tougher and tougher. Every film has its own particular manifestation of that. And so some of the films, actually, that is an ingredient in the actual dramatic story, because that sense of the impact or coming up against humanity does actually turn the story in two of the films. In all of the films, we address in the making of a sense of their status, because all these films have got advisors, of course, who have helped us, and we've given them an opportunity to do a bit of that contextualizing in the making of. So the making ofs aren't the traditional kind of, we had this amazing Wizzo camera. There's a bit of that, but it's more about, again, contextualizing even further by using this family, these particular families' lives, you can extrapolate out to the issues for all lions, all chimpanzees, all wild dogs, or painted wolves, as you keep saying, tigers, and ultimately emperor penguins. These are not technological breakthrough shows. I think they're storytelling breakthrough shows. So there isn't really an amazing gizmo sequence to do. Having said that, the painted wolf making of, I think there is quite a bit about the filmmaking in that, because that's probably the most epic of them all, because these animals range over such an enormous area. And the challenges of doing that, keeping up with them and filming them and seeing how this behaviour plays out on a bigger stage, has required, you know, to film them 24 hours. So we've had to have low-light cameras, nighttime cameras, we've had to have drones, helicopters. At one point we had 5 crews simultaneously following them, because it's a story about a pack breaking in half and a mother and daughter coming into conflict. So you had to be able to follow both packs simultaneously to see how they were both strategizing what was going to happen. So that was a massive shoot. That was like a Hollywood shoot. I hope the results, people won't even realize that. They won't realize that the scale of it, because of the sort of intimacy. But actually, if you do step back and think about it, you think, God, how on earth did they get all that? Well, it's by a huge amount of time and a huge amount of obsessive behaviour from the directors and the filmmakers. This is more like an obs doc, where we have followed them and recorded what actually happens. Now, if one's made obs docs, you know that what you're doing is you start off with 10 characters, and as you shoot, you find it down, and you keep checking, where's this storyline going, where's the story developing here, and effectively you start to sort of script in your head where you think the tension and the dramatic elements of this will go, and that's the approach we've done. So the editing of it has been quite interesting, in that unlike a traditional, Planet Earth 2 or something, where you shoot it all and you storyboard it out and you know the stories, and then you come into edit and you do a 20-week edit or whatever it is, and that's it. What we had to do is we had to shoot 1, shoot 2, edit where the story's going. Okay, that's where okay, shoot in a slightly different way, edit, come back after shoots 3 and 4, edit again. So the editing period was very extended, which is a challenge in its own right, keeping the talent involved, because the editors obviously have other things to do. So it's been logistically, it's not been an easy project to make, that's for sure, for a lot of reasons. Just because it's not a traditional model. So I think there is this interesting convergence between documentary and drama, which we've tried to tread without dramatizing it. And I think it's really important that I don't want people to think these are dramas, because they're not, even though we're playing, I'm probably showing today some of the posters, some of the marketing is quite film or poster-like. Each of the characters have got a kind of a nickname, and they have I say real names. The scientists or the people who study them have given them names, and that's important to help people identify them. Interestingly, the chimpanzee is perversely called David, which is interesting for David Attenborough to describe it as David, but there we are. That was what he was called. I think it's very interesting to know where this will take us. These are tricky to pull off, and also there aren't that many animals that you can do this to. So I think it would be a shame if we didn't take this on and do another Dynasty series, but I suspect the form and the storytelling approach and I think the boldness of this will influence other projects. I think what this often happens when there's a sort of a new approach or a bold effort to do something. It may not be absolutely adopted, but it has influence. Now it's interesting. David Attenborough, who of course is been doing this for nearly 70 years, he is absolutely. He thinks these are amazing films because he says these are real documentaries. These feel like he feels we've never done anything that has this sense of realism or reality about it. So he's very, very behind it. And I think that's always a good sign because he knows what he's talking about.
This is Dynasties.